absent. Eric Ostenchuk.
Here.
John Woodward.
Here.
And Scott.
Here. And would we have enough for a quorum to move forward? Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much. So, speeding through the agenda, on to public comment today. Do we have anyone here to present public comment?
Adrian Jadick, Wyomissing. I want to address both 915 Penn Avenue and the broader discussion of the Governor's Housing Initiative. On 915 specifically, the Borough Engineer's review letter said the property is in the Ramway overlay, and it also explains that this overlay was created to encourage structured parking and increase green space for MS4 sediment reduction purposes. That matters. Ramway is not just a slogan for build apartments whenever possible. It has standards, and those standards were adopted for a reason. The same review letter identifies serious unresolved issues: inaccurate paved area calculations, missing renderings, parking non-compliance, buffer issues, lighting and safety concerns, alley and right-of-way conflicts, driveway spacing problems, missing impact studies unresolved, utility and fire flow information, stormwater testing gaps, ADA problems, refuse and delivery questions, and traffic circulation concerns. And by the way, this was also appealed in court, that decision. I hope you know by now. That's not a nearly finished plan. That's a plan with fundamental unresolved questions. So my request is simple. Do not let a statewide housing pamphlet become dust in residents' eyes. Do not use the Governor's Housing Initiative as a blank check to ignore local review. And do not treat a technical waiver or general policy discussion as a momentum towards approval of a plan that still does not comply with the borough's own standards. If the Planning Commission acts on the scale waiver tonight, the motion should state clearly that it is technical only without prejudice and does not constitute support for a preliminary plan and conditional use approval or any later council approval. And on the broader housing discussion, I would ask the Commission to say clearly Wyomissing can support responsible housing without throwing away Ramway, without bypassing engineering review, and without pretending that Harrisburg policy languages replaces local due diligence and zoning requirements. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Jada. Any other comments today? Public comment? Hearing none. Moving on. So next on the agenda, we do have 915 Penn Avenue. Anything to start on that for Gina?
Yeah, just a brief update for anyone who hasn't been made aware. There's been an appeal on the conditional use decision for 915 Penn Avenue. That's a technical appeal that will be reviewed by the Court of Common Pleas as to whether or not the review process and the advertising process for that hearing was appropriate. So at such time, the applicant for this project, 915, has decided not to pursue this at the Planning Commission tonight. We're waiting until the result of that process. How do you think you want to add to that?
I think he said they weren't going to appear in light of the pending appeal. So again, you have 4C, approve, deny, or table recommending to council granting the waiver. Nick had no problem granting the waiver in the review letter. It's just up to you whether you want to consider that or table it. And Nick, when is the 90 days up on the plan? You guys told me.
Second week of August.
So.
Is there a reason we can't address it in July?
No, there's none at all.
Okay, perfect. So we can move this review with the table, since they are not here, let that play out as it is, and then pick this back up with our July meeting based on the outcome of the appeal. Is that correct?
That's fine with me as long as it's good with.
Well, I mean, the appeal's not going to be decided by then. I'm just saying, at some point in time, they're going to be before you again. Right now on this agenda is, do you want to approve, deny, or table granting the waiver? So I think you want to table, although by Robert's Rules of Order, table means that it's moved to next month's agenda. Maybe between and that time we can inquire of the developer what exactly they want to do with that, because they're going to have to ask for an extension. I don't think they're going to withdraw the plan.
Okay. I was going to say, 30 days to address this before the July Planning Commission would allow us time to discuss the possibility of whether or not they're going to withdraw, which I sort of doubt, or allow for a time extension on the application.
Okay. thank you very much for the input. So I'll open it up to the commission. I think that tabling it at this point is probably the best thing we can do. Move it on to next month's meeting. How about everybody else?
Yes, I agree. I make a motion to table the request for the waiver regarding the plan.
Wonderful. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so we will table the waiver from sections 401.1 and 403.1 for plan scale. Okay, moving on, 1714 State Hill Road. So we are to review and discuss the conditional use application. Was there any initial review completed of the application at this point that we can talk about?
I mean, I can pipe up on that if you two are looking at each other. At this point in time, you do not have an application before you to review, but I think it would be most appropriate to let the applicant speak because they're on the agenda.
So can we back up and explain why we do not have an application to review at the moment?
Everyone should have received a letter. A determination was made that the application was incomplete, and there's been a request made for a traffic study. The zoning officer made a request for a traffic study and also for a more complete rendering of the project to show the surrounding neighborhood.
And has that letter, was that provided in the information that was provided online, or will that letter be made available?
I don't see why there's any reason why the letter can't be made available. That letter was sent out this afternoon, so
Okay.
the upload for onto the website hasn't happened.
That's understood. So I think that if that's the determination we've made, I think it's important for us to give a completer picture to what's going on. So if we can get that added in going forward. And you said since they are still on the agenda, you think we should, it would be
Yes.
allowable to give them the opportunity to explain the plan, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So,
Well, just to speak to the extent that they want to. I don't know what you want to present, Mr. Polino.
Yeah, Sal Folino here on behalf of the applicant, Apartments on State Hill. We submitted a conditional use plan. This falls into the State Hill Overlay District. Pursuant to the plan, no zoning variance is needed. Plenty of parking, plenty of space for 120 units, 1,000 square foot commercial on the bottom if needed. Otherwise, that can be scrapped as well. At this point, we received a letter today indicating that there was an additional request for more of an overlay site to show where this site is in comparison to the neighborhood and just see if it comports with the characteristic of the neighborhood. We do have those documents with us along with an updated rendering. We got this letter today and we worked on it in time, hopefully.
Who did the letter come from?
It came from McCarthy. So there were two issues with the application. One was that they wanted a better rendering essentially and to see where this site is in comparison with the neighbors. The bigger concern is that they're requesting a traffic study. Traffic study at this point, it's not required for a conditional use application in the zoning ordinance. It's not part of the application. It's kind of unheard of at this point because we don't know the extent of the traffic study that's going to be requested. That's typically done during the land development stage. It costs about, the last one we did for the units he built in Morgantown, that was 80 units. That cost about $25,000. Plus if you're going to go back and borough is going to say, hey, council is going to say, hey, you missed this in the traffic study, or you need to extend it to include this portion of State Hill, it's more cost, which is something we are willing to incur. It's just typically not done at this juncture. That's usually a condition that's made part of the land development plan. It's extremely burdensome. I know you touched on the governor's housing action plan. I think this completely goes against it. I mean, to require that of applicants, you're opening up a can of worms. To require a traffic study when you're simply going in for a conditional use application. We're not seeking variances here or anything like that. So my biggest concern, or the reason we're here today, is to request that request in the letter today be removed, and that we don't need a traffic study. Again, it's not required in the zoning ordinance or as part of the directions on the application. Excuse me. Furthermore, it's important to note, I'm sure you all know, PennDOT's done a traffic study there. They're doing a roundabout there. Eventually that property's going to be right in, right out. And we're actually not an expert here, but it's likely going to show less traffic because it's moving from commercial to residential. Again, not that we don't need one in the future, I just think it's premature at this point and cost prohibitive, so.
I could just jump in. So if I understand sort of your question, you were asking this body to waive the need for a traffic study with a conditional use application.
Correct.
So I think the question that I have for the solicitor is who has
You're
jurisdiction
gonna
over
be asking them to recommend to, at this stage of the game, I think it would be the zoning officer, because the zoning officer is the person who made that decision.
Yeah, so I guess at this stage,
It's a
I would ask the
recommendation
zoning
from-
officer to determine that the application we submitted with the supplemented renderings is a sufficient application to move forward without the traffic study.
So I think the solicitor and I agree that the jurisdiction over the question that's being asked rests with the zoning officer and the advice of the solicitor, not the planning commission.
Yes, that doesn't mean that the planning commission, after hearing the request here, could, if it so chooses, make its feelings known in the form of a recommendation.
I agree.
I think that we all know that has been studied ad nauseum. I don't know what else could be learned from a further study.
Here's my concern, John. It's a state road. They have to get a PennDOT permit for their driveway. I'd like to hear what PennDOT's scope would be, at least a scope application to PennDOT at this time might be appropriate. Much cheaper, and at least you can get initial feedback on the driveway location and the operations.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I think will be needed in the future, but at this point with the conditional use application, I think the point is to determine whether this fits into the overlay district and whether the use is permitted with perhaps certain conditions applied to it.
I mean, it's an online portal to PennDOT. It takes a half an hour to fill out, and it usually takes at least a month to get back. So I'm just saying start the process with them might be beneficial from the time standpoint of view as well.
Just for my 2 cents.
Can you state your name, please?
Robert Hames with Berkeley Surveying and Engineering.
Thank you.
Assisting with the planning for this project. We've already spoken with PennDOT's design consultants that are working on the roundabout project through this area. They're the ones that gave us the details that this would be a right in, right out driveway. That they didn't have any concerns with this. Again, generally the assumption is that you're going from a commercial use to a residential use, that the traffic is going to be reduced, if anything.
Yeah, understood. I mean, it's a different department at PennDOT. You're going to have to go through the permitting unit for the driveway permit. So that's the feedback I'd be looking for instead of the consultant for the stakeholder.
As Mr. Polino said, we'll have to go through land planning with the same body. It's a question of whether that's germane before we make a decision if the conditional use applies to the property. If the specifics of where the driveway is located, how it's shaped, and how it provides access to the road in accordance with PennDOT regulations is all something that can be worked out through planning. I don't know that it has a specific impact on whether or not the conditional use is appropriate, but obviously that's for the zoning officer and this board to provide comment on.
I have a question. Is it one of the required items for the conditional use, or is it one of those that lists it as a option?
Yeah, it's not specifically outlined. It's basically, in summary, it says any additional information as deemed necessary by the zoning officer.
But part of the conditional use application, they kind of show that they able to handle traffic, correct?
Not necessarily, if I understand your question correctly. I mean, as part of the application requirements, there's nothing in there that says a traffic study is required with the application.
Correct.
I think you're talking about the list of conditional use standards.
Correct.
That you have to affirm that you meet.
You meet sewer, water.
Health, safety, welfare.
Correct. Yes. Is there one for traffic?
I believe there is. I don't know off the top of my head.
Now, the difference between the full traffic study and, Eric, what you mentioned about a scope document. Can you help me understand a little bit more? I'm not as familiar with the scope document. Scope document, it's an online portal with PennDOT's called EPS, and you upload your land use, a plan with a sketch like this, since you will have to go through the permitting process, highway occupancy permit process. That's usually where you start. You garner feedback. I anticipate they would say a traffic study is not needed, but they would want to look at the access perhaps.
and then they will give you feedback on access location, operations, etc.
And then understanding that we expect this driveway is going to be right in, right out. So we're not getting anyone who's going to be turning left into the property across the lanes, and anyone who's leaving the property will also be required to only turn to the right. Would the traffic study, and I'm not sure if this is a question we would know at this point in time, would the traffic study have to address how those drivers would have to navigate? Because there's not an easy place to turn around.
Not
if you're-
typically. So my understanding is the right in, right out condition would be when the State Hill Road project goes in. But the question I would have is what happens before that if you're open operating? Are you planning not to open before that project goes in?
Does the borough have an updated timeline on when that project's going in?
Guess is as good as mine.
So this is the same when we started talking to PennDOT 2 years ago, I guess.
Right.
It was. I mean, they didn't have a timeline for when it was coming in.
Sure.
As of right now, there's a driveway there, there's a property there, it has access there. PennDOT can't tell you that you can't have access to the property.
Right.
They-
But do we know if there's a
modify-
permit for the driveway? An active permit?
Is there an active permit?
I mean, was it permitted? Does it have
To
a?
my knowledge, there wasn't a permit actually for the
Right.
driveway, because it pre-existed with permitting.
So you'll have to get a permit for the driveway.
For any modifications to the driveway or use on the property, yes.
Any work within the right of way.
So again, that is all part of land planning, and it's gonna take at least a year to get through that land planning once we get to that point. Right, I mean, to me, there is a solution. Like I said, in my previous conversations with PennDOT's design team is that, this is what they're looking at. Their concerns are, they don't want the driveway access too close to the roundabout.
Right.
So as long as we don't move it all the way to the eastern edge of the property, there shouldn't be a problem from that
Right.
standpoint.
I just know for my clients, they want to get out in front of PennDOT as quickly as possible because that's a year process in and of itself. So, garnering their feedback doesn't seem like a bad idea to me.
No, and that's definitely something we'll move forward to. I just don't want that to be a condition in submitting a conditional use application, because then you're here.
Yeah, it seems like.
It just seems.
I mean, you will have to have testimony regarding the questions of the conditional use, so whoever does the testimony about the traffic would have to base it on something. I'm guessing some kind of traffic generation comparison between what was there and what you're proposing. But in order to answer that question in the affirmative, there's gonna have to be something done, I would say.
And I think that's exactly the point, right? When it gets to the point where you have a hearing in front of the Borough Council for conditional use, like, I can't imagine that the scope of the project that's being proposed and where it's being proposed, the traffic doesn't become a part of the conversation. So the question becomes how much information about traffic is needed to facilitate sort of the conversation that needs to happen, but ultimately allow for there to be a fair process for everyone to be rendered. And that's a subjective question.
It is, I guess, just looking at past experience with the borough, the one project that we were involved with for multifamily housing did not require any sort of traffic study or pre-scoping. If it wasn't a PennDOT road, the scoping meeting wouldn't be a thing anyways. So,
I mean, I think that you can provide traffic information regarding the use, general drive location, and call that a traffic study. I mean, that's.
or at least an analysis.
Evaluation. Right.
Correct, yes.
I think that's probably what we'd be looking for, in my mind. Whatever you want to call it. I don't see the need for, like John said, extensive traffic studies of State Hill Road. It's been studied to death, but the access and, how the traffic generation compares to what is there now.
Yeah, I think if this application proceeds, when it gets to Borough Council, we'll be able to pull the studies that have been done and have our expert testify to that regard.
Did you find anything?
It doesn't explicitly say traffic, public facilities and services.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to put on the best case they can to Borough Council. Whether that's, I can't imagine traffic doesn't come up at the hearing. So they're gonna have to have someone there to testify to it. I don't have an issue.
I think the recommendation from the zoning officer, speaking for myself, for a traffic study is a defensible one. I think if there wants to be a conversation about what does that exactly look like in terms of the total study to get in front of the council and have a conditional use application, I think that's a conversation that professionals can kind of figure figure out sort of where we're going with it. And I think that can certainly be informed by any recommendation made by the planning commission today.
I'm just not clear on where that leaves our application. I'm not trying to be
figured
obtuse
out.
here.
I completely understand. I don't think that is going to get figured out in this planning commission meeting. I think there's gonna have to be further conversation about it, which we can do.
So is our application withdrawn? I mean, are we supposed to withdraw it? Are you saying it's not moving forward? It's just in limbo right now.
I think that's a good question. I think the zoning officer sent a letter today that needs to be responded to. I hear sort of your position on it, and I think further conversation about what that looks like to get sort of that completeness review completed needs to happen, which I think we can do in the coming days. And I think that can be informed by whatever the recommendation of the planning commission is today. Because ultimately, the question that you're asking about the traffic study isn't the jurisdiction of this body, it's the jurisdiction of the zoning officer. So we're gonna need to talk about it to figure out how we can get to a place where we can ultimately have a complete application that can be reviewed by the borough council.
Okay. I would just ask to look at precedent, what other developers have done, and not start, not force this developer to do something that hasn't been done in the past.
Sure, your point's well taken.
Thank you.
Is it worth asking for this board to,
I'm sorry?
is it worth asking for this board to weigh in on the application itself at this time, or?
Yeah, I think you already have. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, there's no application to weigh in on right now, technically.
Technically.
But I understand what you're saying, and I'll do my best to make sure you don't have to resort to mandamus to make them take your application for the conditional use.
Thank you.
and I think there's another meeting where that can happen. And we have 45 days to have a hearing, so we're going to have an opportunity to be back here in July.
But we don't, the 45 days isn't running, so don't worry about that.
I'm sorry?
The time period isn't running at this point in time.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And can you just explain to me why the time period is not yet running?
Because there is no application pending.
Okay.
Per the letter that was issued by the zoning officer this afternoon requesting the 2 additional items, and then it also specifically says at the bottom that it's not running.
Understood. So the letter issued today prevents the clock from starting. So when the application is resubmitted and we can look at it again through the zoning officer, that's when we would start the clock, once it's received at that point in time, and once we've addressed the items in the letter through professional services.
Yeah, but again, to repeat, I think what he's looking for is, he doesn't want, and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, you don't want to have to wait to have the application accepted until whatever this preliminary process that was discussed going to PennDOT is undertaken and you get an answer.
Correct. That'd be extremely burdensome.
Okay.
So I think at this point, the application really isn't submitted until the zoning officer deems it appropriate, complete, and then says, okay, it's submitted, then the clock starts ticking. So we're just asking the zoning officer to do that as quickly as possible.
Understood.
I had one follow-up question on traffic real quick. Do you know if Valley Green Circle is gonna be right in, right out after the roundabouts are completed?
Don't have a definite answer
2
on
years
that.
ago, they gave us an answer, they said,
They said it should be full
Yeah.
access at
Yeah.
Valley Green.
So a follow-up is, I see you have emergency access proposed to Valley Green. Is there an incumbents to, can you do a full access to Valley Green?
Right now, just emergency.
Right now,
I'm just thinking in the case if you have a right in, right out on State Hill Road, if you have the ability to go out to Valley Green Circle and it's full movement, it may give you the opportunity to have full movement.
it would be preferable, but at this point in time, we don't have that agreement with the.
Okay,
Valley Green.
I can see the question coming up several fronts, so.
It's
We're looking
it's a very good question.
Okay.
eventually, I think the plan is when this is done, you go right, go loop around,
Yeah,
run around the other
roundabout.
one, so you're, a little extra mileage, but you'll get it.
And it's residents, so it's people that do it every day.
If there's no other feedback for the draft application, we can move on to the next agenda item, unless you want to discuss the draft application.
Well, I think because you guys are such sticklers on the agenda, you need to, I think the motion is moot because there's nothing. So I think we just move forward and have the minutes indicate because of the no application, the motion was.
Okay, so we will not entertain a motion as the application was deemed moot at this point in time. So moving on to number 6, Governor Shapiro's housing initiative. So this ended up on our plate here at planning. This was something that started from the mayor through economic development. So we took a brief look at this based on a Spotlight PA article at the most recent economic development meeting. So he asked us to bring it here to kind of take a draft look at this. One of the things that jumps out at me, it is page 39, but I'm not sure which actual page it is in the document. It's the page for the call to action. So I'm just going to read off here. If you are a local government, and they have 4 bullet points for us. So we have modernize your zoning to allow more homes in more places, upzone residential and commercial areas to support higher housing density, reduce excessive parking requirements and remove restrictions on shared housing. The second bullet is opt into DCED's housing ready community designation once available. The third bullet is digitize and streamline your local permitting process to make it faster and easier for builders to get residential projects approved. And the final bullet is use local financial tools like local economic revitalization tax assistance act, abatements and tax increment financing to fill funding gaps and support new housing developments. So as a local government, that's the call to action for us there. Again, we have quite a uniqueness here in Wyomissing. We know the struggles that we have without the ability to expand our limited footprint for continuing to move out, where a lot of our redevelopment unfortunately would be up if we look to do that. To me, the thing that jumps out of this overall is that third bullet to digitize and streamline the local permitting process. I think about this as being an individual or being a builder, trying to understand what the process is, trying to streamline some of our zoning to make it easier to know what you need to do, when you need to submit it, who's going to look at it next, and what steps you're looking at in the process. So that's what's kind of jumped out at me from this so far. So I kind of just wanted to continue the conversation and see what the rest of the thoughts of this body is.
Well, I think a lot of the things that are mentioned in there have to do with housing and renters and landlords, and limiting the 1-month security deposit, which I think is going to limit the market as far as I'm concerned. If you have a risky tenant and you say, I'll take 2 months instead of 1, that lets a tenant get in the door instead of not getting in the door. But I don't know how we would have control of that in the boroughs. Shouldn't be a statewide edict or something. The whole cohabitation thing is, that's kind of gray in my mind. The whole foreclosure process, I don't understand how much longer it can get dragged out to give the people another chance. They've already gotten notices and notices and notices for 8 months. But I don't think that's in our purview either. The only thing that affects us directly, I haven't glanced at it, but anyway, it says exempt the local real estate transfer tax. Well, that's costing us money. So how on board with this are we? Are they going to tell us that's the way it's going to be, or are we going to have to do it by municipality? That's all I take, besides what you already mentioned.
All good points, John. Thank you.
I think one of the things in reference to your point number 3 about digitizing and streamlining, what has been helpful is, especially if you go onto the borough's website or something, they list the process and what's required, and that helps people understand exactly and also the fees that are associated. I think that's some low-hanging fruit I think we could get. It would be helpful to get that process moving, so people understand it and what's required.
Great points, absolutely. Eric, do you have any
Do we
takeaways?
still require hard copy submissions?
Mm-hmm.
do? Is it burdensome, the amount, the number? Yeah. And that would be something to look into.
Is there requirements that we receive them physically, or is there ways we can receive them digitally?
You require a thumb drive.
Sir?
You require a thumb drive with the paper.
So we'll accept digital copies
A thumb
to
drive.
turn into paper, but we won't require.
Michelle said, she had said it at one of our meetings that paper was required by state law. So we don't have the ability, presumably,
Yeah.
to override state law.
I think, at least one hard copy, I would say, but is there a number listed in the ordinance? 15 copies? I mean, there are some municipalities that still have that, and it's burdensome.
There is a number, I wanna say it's 3 or 4. Yeah. Some municipalities are,
Yeah, some
I just said one with
17,
11, yeah.
20.
It's not that bad, but there is a number. I would use it electronically anyway, so when I do my reports.
One of the things with that process too is there's a lot of hands in the process, right? So we certainly have a third-party commercial zoning officer. We have a different third-party residential zoning officer. Code inspection falls under one, and then there's people within the borough office that have a different part of the process. So there's not like one place you can go and sort of get all of your questions answered, right? It's sort of depending on the type of question, sort of goes everywhere, and that can cause a developer or a property owner if they want to work on a property to sort of feel like a ping pong ball in terms of where everybody can go.
I mean, so the process you're describing right there, I mean, it sounds like we've kind of built ourselves into this where folks get ping ponged around. Are there better ways that we can have, internal portals or project management software that all these folks can be on the same page at the same time if needed? Or is that kind of a different ball?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes, right? Because we're going to streamline things with technology, but someone still has to own that process, be in charge of it, and sort of oversee and execute that. And all of that is resources, people, funds.
Part of the other conversation at economic development, where we spent a lot of time, was talking about the auxiliary dwelling units. That's kind of what the mayor was focusing on, looking at those in-law suites and things like that, and asking if there was an appetite for us to review those as a whole, or is there some type of overlay needed, or some way we can bring those into what Wyomissing looks like? I think, as I look across the borough, I think we have a lot of different neighborhoods already with, I think, a large number of different zoning districts and different overlays that make it very, very confusing to begin with, on top of trying to bring in, an additional overlay or requirements across the board for those additional dwelling units. So it seems like something along those lines would be a substantial undertaking, would be more of a full overhaul of the zoning ordinance rather than just trying to put another Band-Aid on top.
That's an extensive process. I mean, when we did the work up on Park Road, that was not an inexpensive venture to try to tackle that and get the zoning in place that was proper up there. I don't disagree with you, but it's a process for sure to get it done. Because you had Wyomissing Hills and Wyomissing, and it was just essentially combined at one point, not really redone at that time.
So I don't know if this is necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach. Obviously, we have our own puzzle pieces here in Wyomissing, so I think it's a useful conversation to continue having. And also, to the point in some of these calls to action, it's telling us to be available if something happens down the road. So we're not really sure what's going to happen yet. So I think we can continue this conversation, maybe revisit it overall, but I don't know if we have any specific action that we're looking to take here at the moment. It sounds like a lot of our plans would involve larger projects between new technologies and overhauling the process, or deciding if we need to start a large-scale zoning project that would be a multi-year project. So again, I don't know if we have quick answers for anything at the moment.
I also have another question. I wasn't able to review the whole document. Does it speak to workforce housing at all in there? I'm seeing that in a lot of different municipalities that they're trying to tackle workforce housing.
I don't remember specifically if that was in there. It's been a bit since I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, but it was not something in the local government call to action on there, but also something to keep in mind.
And I believe our ordinance does not address it currently. in terms of trying to incorporate workforce housing.
I don't think so. Anything about that you can remember offhand, if we have anything in the ordinance about workforce housing?
What I would encourage is to define what workforce housing means for you, right? Because workforce housing is going to mean something different every part of the state, depending on the socioeconomic status of the community.
Right.
And what sort of the workforce looks like. So just sort of make sure to talk about affordable housing, attainable housing, or A+ housing, workforce housing, to just put specific definitions around this overall talking about this.
I just hear the question coming up statewide.
Well, I think it would be a good idea if it were a defined term in the municipality's planning code, would be a good start.
You'll work on that, right?
Yeah, right now.
So that was the extent of the discussion I had on this topic today. Any other discussion around the housing plan at this point?
You know, the only thing I have to comment on, when Jana the other day, we were at a Berks County Comprehensive Plan meeting, and there were probably, and I brought it up at the meeting, and Jana pointed it out afterwards, but anyway, there were probably 40 people there, and there were probably 25 planners and 15 people from municipalities, of which there were people like me on the planning commission, weren't elected officials, that, so these plans are they're coming, and there people are making plans, but the people that have to, execute the plans, they're not buying in. So I don't know, it sounds great. He's probably got a lot of planners on his staff making plans too, but I don't know how you get from point A to point B.
Well, you call it planners and doers.
I said, yeah, there's planners and there's doers, and the doers weren't there.
I think it'd be really interesting to have sort of a local focus group, right? If the borough can define the problem that they're trying to solve and what a solution looks like, to have a focus group with sort of everyone that's involved from end to end in that process, including developers and builders, and say, okay, this is the problem that we've identified, this is what we would like to see a solution, what we'd like to see as a solution, what does everyone in this room think about this, and sort of give feedback. Because the developer perspective is going to be completely different from the government perspective, the planner perspective, and the builder perspective. How does that also become different? And if you can do that locally, be able to change.
Again, I think some great discussion. I think some takeaways for us to look at that, and hopefully we'll keep looking at that Imagine Burke stuff when it comes out eventually. So that's everything I had on this. So that brings us to number 7, public comment. Again, do we have any additional public comment today?
I'll just say a couple of words. I am very much for putting these applications online. And we cannot continue to go by what Michelle said. I know you're a big fan. That's untrue. It depends on the municipality, what they want to do. And I think that, just to piggyback on what Sal said, this will help every resident and every entity to be treated equally, which hasn't happened before on the mission. So I do agree that we need to recode, true, but I think we can look at having electronic versions, simplify staff time, etc. I think that's something we should look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any other public comments today? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.